Good evening. Actually, I should say good morning. It's past midnight my time, and I just flew in today, so you'll have to bear with me. But thank you, Shabir, for having me here. And it's my first time at Slush, even though I've been to Helsinki many times in the past. And I'm kind of getting the energy around me from Slush. I'm understanding what this whole 20,000 people event is all about. But I think all of us, how many of us are here for the first time to Slush? A lot of us. So we'll experience this tomorrow, I guess. I think most of us who are here for the first time are outside from Finland. Am I right in saying that? Yeah, so Shamit is my colleague with me. We are all going to see this tomorrow, the big event. And I think it's relentless. I mean, we finish this dinner, and tomorrow morning, 6:30 onward, there's a breakfast. So it's amazing. But that's what entrepreneurship and innovation is all about. It's about using all your energies to deliver something that you're very passionate about. Um, Jovan, in his introductions, talked about that I've actually worked cross-border a lot. I still work in India, of course, but also in Silicon Valley. And a lot of things that I'm going to talk about today, and I won't overburden you with many, many things. As John, my friend over here, just taught us 3 quick lessons, I'm going to give you 3 quick thoughts on what we are doing about innovation as a country. Now, my personal experience with entrepreneurship and innovation has been very exciting. I became, I think in India, when I was 18 in 1988, there was only 3 choices you could have as a career. You could become a doctor or an engineer, and the third didn't matter. So that was the 3 choices. It was either a doctor or an engineer, and third was it didn't matter. And to become an engineer, you had to pass this exam called the IIT exam, the Indian Institute of Technology exam. 2,000 people get selected in 1 million people. That's a ratio less than 2%? And that is what was the competitiveness in all of us. So I think that is the first day I became an entrepreneur, at the age of 18, because you had to win. That is the success rate today of startups. I want to give a round of applause to my friend Taneli over here. He actually has more successes than failures. How many of us can boast of that? I mean, I thought he's talking about failures. I thought the list of successes was much, much bigger. Any venture capitalist in the world will tell you that is an enviable record. I mean, 1 out of 10, the VC firms makes headlines. 1 out of 100, you probably make okay money. But having 9 successes and 8 failures, I counted the numbers, my friend. I think we have to give him a round of applause. So the lesson I drew was that, it's that lucky 0.2%, 2% that succeed in the world. And for that, we had to be very competitive. And you have to invent ways to study, invent 26 hours in 24 hours. Otherwise, you won't clear this test, right? So there was a lot of innovation going on in our minds since then. And luckily, at the age of 22, I ended up at a university in the US, which was working on the forefront of technology. We were the team that developed what is now called the browser, which is so pervasive, but at that point in time, it was not. And at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and we made the world's first browser called Mosaic, and which got converted into, so many other forms of Netscape, Internet Explorer, Mosaic, Mozilla, and whatever else, Chrome. The core technology came from there. And that lesson was amazing to me. And after that, I did a lot of startups in Silicon Valley, in big data, in video over IP, and many other things. But that lesson that I learned as a 22-year-old is what I'm going to talk about today. How you create innovation as a public good, and what impact it can have on society, right? The public good that was created by the University of Illinois was this browser. And it was given out to change the world. Can you imagine a world today without the browser? Probably not. And that, because that is such an amazing story that what I am going to talk about, if I can get this to work, yes, this works. I have a lot of points here, but my core theme is how we can create innovation as a public good and what we are doing in those lines. Of course, these are numbers that all of us know, 7+ billion people, 200+ nations, very young nation, despite what my friend says, 57 years. That's your part of the world, my friend. Rest of the world, something like India, let me tell you, which is the second biggest population in the world, the biggest free nation in the world, it's 65% under 35. That's the youngest nation in the world today. What are they going to be doing 20 years from now? Not watching MTV. They're going to be watching something else or doing something else. The aspirations are much, much, much higher. And of course, it's a very connected population. But where I'm leading to is the story of innovation of India. All of us talk about Silicon Valley. There is also something called Silicon Wadi. Do you know where is Silicon Wadi, by the way? Anybody? Yeah. The name, where is Silicon Wadi? Israel. Yes, thank you. The Wadi is an Israeli word for valley, actually. They created a Silicon Valley there. It's a startup nation. But do you all know what the India model is, which beats all these models today? And why I say this with a lot of pride is that while Silicon Valley has innovated for the top 1 billion of the world, we all represent that top 1 billion, by the way, the 1/6 population of the world, the iPhone generation, the Samsung S7, S6 generation, right, the smartphone generation. We owe it to this nation, by the way, to think about innovation for the frugal. You know why? Because of the Nokia 1100. The Nokia 1100 is the cheapest phone when it was available in the world as a standardized non-smartphone, feature phone. It used to be available for $11 in India, equivalent. And that was the parameter what we innovated with. I'll give you many examples of that. So we owe it to this Finnish company, which used to be a lumber company, I guess, right, to make the best phones in the world. And the phone, $11 phone, which I call the candy bar phone, which is still used by 650 million people in India. Mind the number, 650 million people in India. There are 1 billion people almost in India, actually 1.25 billion, but 0.25 billion are the youngsters below age of 16. And in the billion people who are of consequence, 350 million have smartphones, which is the second biggest smartphone generation in the world, but 650 million people are still not on a smartphone. So it's very, very paradoxical, very interesting. So given this diversity of people and population that we have, what is India setting up as the third model of innovation? And I call that the India model. So we have the Silicon Valley model. Cutting-edge technology, serve the top billion of the world. The India model is absolutely reverse. Frugal innovation, serve the bottom 6 billion of the world. And the bottom 6 billion of the world will get served, my friends, because you can do transactions, you can do things at a cost, innovation at a cost that has never been imagined before. Let me give you some numbers. US has about 4,000 startups. You know how much venture capital goes into that? $68 billion last year. Apples to apples comparison, $68 billion. India right now has 18,000 startups. How much VC funding has gone into India last year? $9.2 billion. Can you imagine that if you can do maths, the geeky of all of us? That's a 30x difference. We are doing innovation at 30x less cost in India than anywhere else in the world. And why we're able to do that is innovation as a public good. And that's what I want to talk about. What we are doing is creating a layer of foundation available to everybody in India, every entrepreneur, any innovator in India. Now what this layer is available today at Facebook, Google, and Apple of the world. Will they make the technology public? Only Tesla has gone ahead, and Elon Musk, my very good friend, has done that. But very few do it. We as a nation have what we have done, and I'll explain to you. We have created a layer called the India Stack and made it a public good, which means it's available to every single entrepreneur to come and build on top of it. So it's like the whole foundation available to you, you just have to build your house around it. And everybody has equal access to this foundation. What does this foundation do? Identity. India did the biggest biometric project of identifying citizens in the world. 1.05 billion people are identified uniquely using a biometric ID, the biggest biometric database in the world. We build, so I can identify any Indian using their thumbprint, their iris, any of the two biometric parameters. They don't need to have anything else. It's completely presence-less. Then we have a payments, a paperless stack, like a Dropbox for the country, integrated with your identity. So your identity, much like Estonia, your digital identity can authenticate your documents, which can sit on a stack available to the country. It's a I call it a Dropbox for the country. So all your documents, your school certificates, your driving license, your passports, are all lying there, identified by your identity layer. So every entrepreneur doesn't have to go through this rigor of making this again. And third thing, very critical. How many of you know what we did 3 weeks ago in India? Very few. Shamit, you don't qualify. What did we do? No, none of you guys.
Well, you invalidated 2 bills and you put up new ones over.
Absolutely, very well put, sir.
And you also did it on the night of the US election.
Oh, absolutely. So brilliant. I love that. Give him a round of applause, by the way. So on November 8th, when the world was watching Mr. Trump trying to win the elections, right? Our Prime Minister always had an ace up his sleeve. He said, I want to catch the headlines better than President Trump. So he said, I'm going to actually, he said it very correctly, economically correct, invalidate 2 currencies from that midnight, India time. The 2 currencies, 86% of the circulation money was taken out of circulation as non-legal tender in one overnight stroke. In 3 hours, they had 3 hours, 8 o'clock the announcement came, at 12 midnight, boom, done. 3 weeks ago, right to this time, 3 weeks ago. And he said, from now onwards, we are going to become a less cash society. Not cashless, really, but less cash society. Digital payments are going to be the norm, and cash will be the exception. He said that in a country which has, as I said, 650 million feature phones, 350 million smartphones. But he said it with confidence because of one thing, that we have done in the past 1 year the biggest financial inclusion in the world. Over the last 2 years, India financially included 250 million people into the banking system, more than the size of USA, by the way. In 1 year, 250 million people were put to the banking system. So anybody today can go into a bank and within less than 3 minutes open a bank account. Why is that? Because of these 2 things, the identity and the paperless layer. You go, give your thumb impression, all your data, which says who you are, what you are, where you stay, is available to the bank. KYC, what is called know your customer, transaction done, you're enrolled in the bank account. Finish, it's over. But that banking system could not work on the standard Visa and MasterCards. The cost of transactions there. What's the average cost of transaction on a Visa MasterCard network? Anybody here?
It's 3%, 3+%.
3% to the merchant, guys. 3% to the merchant. That's called MDR rate, merchant discount rate, 3%. So whenever you swipe your card, the merchant gets 3% less. If you pay 100 euros, the merchant gets 97 euros, right? That's a little too high. On an average, I would say 2%. When I'm talking about frugal innovation, merchants who operate on 5% margin can't afford to lose 2% of their fees, which is 40% of their profit margins. Do you think merchants would agree to come digital? And 40% of the margins go in a transaction cost? Absolutely not. They're going to charge back the consumer. And that's why you see a lot of merchants across third world countries say, if you're going to give a card payment, I can't take 100 from you. You have to give 102. Has anybody ever experienced that? Many times. Because they say, you have to pay more. The 2% fees you have to bear, I can't bear it. My margins don't permit me. So what we did is, we created the world's biggest and the most frugal national payments layer, available to everybody. It's called the payments layer. And how do you do banking? How do you do a payment? We created a trinity of the bank account linked with your mobile number and with your identity. So your identity or your mobile number or your bank account are your virtual banking address. With any of these three things together or individually, you can do any transaction, anywhere in the world. And the beauty of this is, this costs less than 0.08 cents. Less than 1 cent, sorry. So 45 paisa, which is less than 1 cent, 0.8 of a cent. The cost of this transaction is fixed at 0.8 of a cent. This is a cost that nobody has ever done it before. Why I emphasize on this is frugal innovation. This is innovation that is available to the world. If I'm going to do transactions in Kenya, and Rwanda, and Malawi, this is the cost of the transaction there. Because if they're doing a $2 purchase, they can't afford 2%. They can only pay that 1 cent. And this is innovation available to every single entrepreneur in India. You have to build on top of it now. This is free of cost. There's no cost to this. Only the cost of maintaining that infrastructure is passed on to the cost of transaction. That's all. And this has been done in public-private partnership. The best brains that my friend, for example, Taneli was talking about, the 2,000 people that worked for, or 5,000 people that work for Oracle in India, or the 20,000 people who work for Google in India, all of them gave their time and said, we are going to crowdsource the biggest public-private platform innovation as a public good in India. And that's what we have done. And this, my friends, is the India model. This is the reason why India can do innovation at 30 times less the cost. And why this is the model for the rest of the world? Because this is the frugal innovation that rest of the world can consume, right? In a country like India, you know, US has 44% usage of iPhones. 44% of US uses iPhones. All of us do. I'm also a big Steve Jobs fan. I worked for him for many years. How many people do you think in sub-Saharan Africa can afford an iPhone? Absolutely none. But they still need banking, right? How do these poor people do banking when there are no banks that exist close by? Mobile. But for them, mobile doesn't mean a smartphone. It means that candy bar, $8 phone, the Nokia phone. And do you know how that works? Anybody? Any guesses? Has anybody tried *99# on their phone? So I'll show that to you if you are interested. There's something called USSD. You can do all banking transactions using a what is called USSD, secure unstructured data layer. And that's what we do. That's how people come into banking. And they now use wallets. They use payments. Merchants receive money. We don't need POS any longer. We don't need expensive POS machines. The cost of moving money is the cheapest in the world in India. This complete supply chain has been disrupted by the most unlikely person on this planet, a unicorn that I am so proud I have created, the Prime Minister of this country. Many people don't realize, I was part of the team that ran his campaign. I left my cushy job, and I've been volunteering as a country volunteer for the last 6 years for this reason only, that if we have the right CEO, which is the Prime Minister of a country can take new leadership strides. So our CEO is our Prime Minister, who I believe, as a lot of my successful startups, that was one startup I invested in my time, and it became super successful. So, guys, this is what I call innovation for the new generation. This is going to be the model that I think we want to think about, talk about. And when Shabir wanted me to come and say, talk about innovation or what we are doing, which is different, I wanted to present this as an opportunity. The world needs to start consuming. Now, what we also believe is happening along with that is, while you do such massive digitization, 1 billion people do 5 to 10 transactions a month. 5 to 10 transactions a month, average about 7 transactions a month of any sort. 7 billion data points are getting created individually by people, let alone businesses. You know how, from a data poor country, we are becoming data rich? Data is the new oil. And that is what we have to compete on. And I think countries like India, continents like Africa, Europe, they all have started appreciating the value of this new oil, which is data. It's an amazing story because suddenly countries all over the world, from being very, very data poor, are becoming so data rich. Credit is becoming very easily available. Right? Business credit, home credit, personal credit, ranking of things, projects, personal property. And what we are doing is we are applying the best technology to solve basic problems. Agriculture, consumer aggregating to buy the best products. Blockchain for land records. Right? The lesson that lies is the technology is so internal. What is external should be the ease of use to the consumer. I have farmers who are right now experimenting with blockchain. They have no understanding of B of the blockchain. Because they're seeing their land records go online, and they get their soil reports. Because the land record is online, they get their soil reports on a daily basis via simple SMS, a text message on their simple mobile phone. And they're able to decide what kind of seeding, what kind of fertilizer, what kind of work they need to do in their farms on a daily basis. They have no idea what technology is working behind that, what neural networks are at play. And it shouldn't matter to them. What should matter to us is, as a disruptor, am I able to reach my consumer, which is that farmer, at the lowest possible cost, with the best and most accurate data and information point that is actionable for him or her. And that's what we are able to achieve by hiding all of technology, all of complexity in a standardized stack and making available the front end in very simple, consumer-friendly, citizen-friendly devices. I could go on, but so the point we are trying to make is innovation as a public good, high technology, inward-facing, external, what makes sense to the consumer, what makes sense to the citizens. Last thing I'll leave you with. You know, it's become fashionable for everybody to have the greatest app on their phone. Last question. I've been a professor all my life, so I love to ask questions, so you'll have to pardon me for that. And you've been, as a class, doing very well, by the way, so all A graders. How many apps exist on a Google Play Store or an Apple App Store? Any guesses? For a particular country, like US or maybe India or maybe China. China, oh, sorry, Google doesn't work in China, sorry. How many apps probably exist on an app store for a country like US? Give or take. Yes, Raghu, 3 million. What's going to happen with so many apps out there? Do we need so many apps? Platforms are the new way. And keep this in mind. We have complexed the customer-facing technology so much where it need not be. Simple SMS can do so many notifications. A simple messenger can do so many notifications. WhatsApp or WeChat, whatever is prevalent in our parts of the world, is the new platform. So no longer all these apps. There'll be certain apps. People are fighting to be on the top 10 apps on your smartphone, but it's going to become an app-less world. And that's one prediction you asked me to do. I'm going to do that. Platforms are going to be the new browsers. when in 1992 we said this e-commerce, this new browser called Mosaic that we are launching is going to disrupt everything. I'm telling you today, platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, the biggest platform, I don't know whether you realize this, the biggest platform today, it's probably bigger than Facebook, is WhatsApp actually. How many people on WhatsApp? 1.1 billion people, all of us, right? It's the #1 reason why people go on a smartphone, by the way. Today, WhatsApp causes about $105 billion of revenue loss to telcos. Single-handedly. And what's WhatsApp's data model, business model? Data. Nothing else but data. Right? So, I'm going to leave, as I said, I'm going to leave you with that thought. One of the innovation partnerships that I am very profusely advocating is countries and entrepreneurs like you, like me, all of us need to don't think of each other as only as markets. The biggest mistake we make as innovators and entrepreneurs is we treat each other as markets. We need to treat each other as co-creators. And once we start doing that, no big or small, you'll find innovation more localized, more frugal, and more readily available. And I think that is the world that we are leading to. String all the pearls together. You know, if you have individual pearls, it's not valuable. You string them together, it's a lot more value. That's what co-creation does. And with that message, have a good night, and thank you for bearing me out.